Hello everyone, my name is Madison and I'm an undergraduate educator here at the Collaborative Learning Center, and today we're going to record the Time Management for Academic Success workshop. I'm here with my coworker Lindsay Evelyn. She's also an undergraduate educator, and we're going to talk through how we usually do this workshop and different ways to manage your time, both in the short term and the long term. So this is the Academic Effectiveness Questionnaire, and I encourage you to scan this QR code and take the questionnaire because it helps to show you kind of where your strengths and weaknesses are in regards to time management and study skills and things like that. And it's something we have everyone take when they usually sign up for our workshops. It doesn't take too long, so if you have a few minutes, just go ahead and fill that out. Okay, so when we give this workshop in person, we usually have everyone take 3 to 5 minutes to write down ways that you think you exhibit problems with time management. So I encourage you to stop the video and wait for a couple minutes and just think about ways that you struggle with time management, whether that be procrastinating or not having enough time to get everything done. And when you're done, go ahead and unpause the video and we'll talk over some common themes. So some common examples of time management problems include there's too much reading for this class, I can't read fast enough, I don't need to go to lecture because the professor posts the lectures online, I don't have enough time to study, I got behind in Spanish because I was cramming for a chemistry exam, I don't know how many midterms there are for this class, I had to pull an all-nighter to pass that exam, and I put things off, but I do my best work when I'm under a lot of pressure. So a lot of these things are really common problems that students have, and everyone has struggled with at least one of these throughout their college career. And that's not saying that even if you do get better at time management that you're not going to experience these things, but we're trying to give you some tools to overcome them and to get into a good routine so that these aren't as big of an issue. Okay. And part of this comes from Bandura's triadic reciprocal determinism, and basically it's talking about how your self-efficacy is made up of 3 different things: your behavioral factors, your personal factors, and your environmental factors. So your behavioral factors are things such as what have you done? What is your routine? What have you done in the past? Have you been successful in classes leading up to the class that you're in right now? Things like that. You have personal factors. What can you do? What are you naturally good at? What do you like to do? What is your favorite class? Are you taking a class that is interesting to you, or one that you're taking because you need it to fill a requirement? Things like that. And then your environmental factors are what do others do or believe you can do? So these are things like, who do you study with? Is your family supportive? What's your home life like in your dorm or your apartment? Where do you study best? Who do you study best with? Things like that. Okay, and how can you increase your motivation to accomplish goals? So choose goals that are important to you and that you believe you can achieve. Pay attention to and build on what you've already accomplished, and hang out with people who are doing what you want to do and who believe you can do it too. So that comes down to those personal, behavioral, and environmental factors again. But really setting goals that are attainable and sticking to them is really important in getting better at time management. Okay, so today we're going to talk about different calendar types, and we focus on these calendar types because you can just fill them out once at any point in the semester and they're good the rest of the semester. There are a lot of people that you like to use daily planners, but I find that sometimes students burn out of filling those out. I always get one at the beginning of the year, and in September, it's absolutely beautiful. I have every single assignment in there, every single club meeting, every single class. And then October, oops, sorry about that. In October, I have, maybe my classes and my exams and my quizzes. And then in November, I have just the exams. And in December, my calendar is basically blank. So we really focus on ones you can fill out once and use for the remainder of the semester. And those are the semester calendar, which we're going to talk about at the very end of this workshop, which only contains your major exams and assignments. And you're going to put this somewhere where you can't miss it. And then a weekly calendar to visualize the most efficient way to get high value content into your head. So this is all about figuring out, where do I have commitments such as classes, club meetings, work, and where do I have gaps in my time that I can use to be studying frequently and for shorter periods of time rather than cramming right before an exam. So you all should have the weekly course schedule activity, the lecture prep and review schedule in front of you. And what I encourage you to do is to take this and just fill out all of your major commitments. So go on Schedule Builder and just block out all the times for your classes. If you have a meeting every Monday or you work every weekend at a specific time, go ahead and put those things in there. Any non-negotiable commitments that are the same pretty much every week. So go ahead and pause the video and take a few minutes to do that. And this is an example of what the schedule builder looks like if you were confused before. And so before we put in our study times and our lecture prep and review times, we're going to talk a little bit about why this is important. So it comes down to space practice. And space practice is all about setting little bits of time aside for each class very frequently instead of cramming. So you start planning early for exams and set aside a little bit of time every day, because 5 hours spread out over 2 weeks is better than the same 5 hours all at once. You review your information from each class, and after you review the information for the most recent class, you go back and study information that's older in order to keep it fresh. So this can be as simple as when I come to class, I'm going to get to class 15 minutes early and I'm going to go over what I learned the day before. Or I have this math class and it meets 4 days a week. So on Friday when I don't have it, I'm going to sit down for like a half hour and go over what I did for that week, in addition to doing the homework assignments, things like that. And this is based on the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. So basically this is saying that if you walk out of class, you walk out of lecture, and you know 100%, you understand everything that the professor said, you don't have any questions, but then you don't review the information, after just one day, you've forgotten about 20% of the information. And there's different curves depending on who's creating them, but basically the idea is that the more frequently you review it, the less steep the slope of the line gets. So if you review it the day after, the slope gets even less steep, and it takes you 2 days after your review to forget the same amount of information. And you can continue to space it out farther and farther until you get to the exam or the day before the exam, and all you really have to do is kind of refresh your memory, and there's nothing that's jumping out at you as being new information or information that you haven't seen in a couple months. It's all review, and all you have to do is just jog your memory.
So all of this brings us to why prepare for lectures. So just to reiterate, when you prepare for lectures, your engagement will be improved. So if you study for a class multiple days a week and you're prepared for your next lecture because you went over what you did in the last class and the classes before, you'll have improved engagement in classes, and you'll be able to understand what you're learning that day better, which relates to improved comprehension, because if you're better prepared, you'll be able to better understand what your professor is telling you and what you're reading in class, and all of those good things. And then better retention of content. So if you're only cramming and studying for something the night before, it's most likely going to stay in your short-term memory. But if you're practicing spaced practice and purposefully studying when you schedule it out, which we'll do a little bit more later, you'll have better retention of the content that you're learning, which is important because as a college student, you want to retain all the information that you can, because your classes should theoretically build upon each other. And then it also helps students prioritize their studies, so you won't have to study for an exam like the night before and sacrifice your reading for your other class because you spent too much time studying for the class that you were prepared for. Or you won't have to sacrifice going to the club that you always go to because you have to have study time. You'll be better prepared to be able to do those things. And then it also allows students to brush up on problem areas in advance. So you won't have the thing happen where it's like 3 a.m. the night before an exam and you're like, oh, I don't understand this large concept, but it's too late for me to like email my TA, I have an exam in 5 hours or something. If you're studying every day and specifically focusing on like trying to understand the lectures of today and how they connect with like the lectures of the past, then you'll be able to recognize areas of that you need to brush up on and ask your TA about, or ask your professor about, or talk to a classmate about before the night of the exam, which will help you with all the other things above. So that is why prepare for your lectures. And then normally in our workshop, we would have an activity about what advice would you give to students about how to prepare for lectures. This just generally gets good ideas from different students in the class because everyone prepares differently, and sometimes we miss things that other people are doing that could be helpful for someone else. So while we can't have like a small group, maybe it could be helpful to like ask your friends in your class what they do to study, or ask people that you know who are in the same major as you what they do to study for certain classes, because people have a bunch of different ideas and certain ideas can be super helpful for other people, just depending on what they do and how you learn. And then the next part would be lecture preparation resources, just to reiterate. So assigned reading chapters are always super helpful because your professor is presenting the information to you in one specific way from their background, from what they learned when they went to university, from what they learned when they were even in like grade school, and all of these different things that influence how they understand the content. And then the assigned reading chapters are a different way of understanding the content, basically from like the author's background and the author's understanding and how like they conceptualize different topics and things like that. So it's good to get like basically like a different point of view on the same exact content. So it should be the same. It's just can be helpful because one way might not make sense to you and the other might make total sense to you. And then lecture outlines or slides are really beneficial because if your professor posts those before the lecture even, you can get basically a hold on what's the most important thing in class that day. And that's super beneficial because if your professor talks about it, you can like make a mental note like, oh, okay, this is really important. Here, I should maybe listen more than I write, or I should write more than I listen, depending on what type of learner you are. And then previous lectures are always useful, connecting the content of what you learned today with what you learned like 2 weeks ago or a month ago. And then your syllabus is super important because focusing specifically on lecture topic schedule, that can just lay out the entire course. Well, it does lay out the entire course, and it'll give you a good idea of what you should be focusing on. And unit objectives are super important for the same reason. And then now we have an activity. So it will be the lecture prep and review schedule that you filled out earlier and put all the classes into. So for this, you are just going to want to go in and put prep time, review time, and study time. It sounds like a lot of time, but it's really helpful. So earlier, like Madison was saying, the prep time should be basically, it could be like 5 minutes before class, 15 minutes before class. You show up before class and you just go over what you did in the last lecture. You go over what you did 2 lectures ago or like 5 lectures ago, and make sure that that content is down and you have that. And if you don't, write down questions that you can ask your TA after lecture or before lecture, things like that. And that's super helpful for why I prepare for lectures. And then the review time would be kind of a similar thing, just staying after class 5 minutes in your same seat even, or like on the bus when you're trying to head home. But like reviewing the content that you did in class and making sure that everything makes sense. And then the last one would be study time. So study time is going to be a bigger chunk of time, depending on how much time you want to study per hour. I mean, yeah, per hour. Some people study for like 30 minutes at a time. Some people can study for 2 hours at a time. So making sure that you put in that time for yourself, and then that can fluctuate because the lecture prep and review schedule is kind of like trial and error until you figure out how much time you actually need for your classes. And then that can hold you accountable. And it's basically to make sure that when you're just sitting around and you're like, I don't know what I should be doing right now, let me just go on Twitter for an hour. Or I don't know what I should be doing right now, I'm gonna go watch half an hour of Netflix. This can hold you accountable and show you that you actually have like study time prepped out. So you need to go focus on that. And then once you're done with that, you can do other things. Yeah. So this is what it would kind of look like. This one's a little bit overwhelming, but yours could kind of look like this, just depending on how much time you need each day. A really important thing to remember is to basically put in times that you yourself can handle. So like, I'm not a person who will wake up before a 10:20 class, so I won't put that on there. Or like, some people won't study on Saturdays because they just don't want to, and all things like that. So make sure you can put times that you can handle, and then also make sure that you don't block out every minute of your time because that will become super overwhelming, and you need time to be a person too. Yeah, so I just encourage you to pause the video and try to create a sample schedule on your lecture prep and review schedule. So then the last thing that we're going to talk about today is the bigger, larger semester calendar. So for this one, the importance of this is you're supposed to fill it out once per semester, just like the lecture prep and review schedule, and you'll put all of your big assignments on it. So you'll put like your exams, you'll put your essays, you'll put your project deadlines, and that will give you basically like a visual representation of your entire semester so that you never get caught up in like working on your homework on a Sunday night and looking at the week ahead and you have like 3 exams all on Wednesday and you didn't know, because that can become super overwhelming and completely ruin the schedule that you created for yourself. So this is a good way to get ahead of that. And then also some people like to put like big events. So if they're going to like, I don't know, like they're going to like a wedding, they'll put it on there and they'll know they probably don't have that weekend free. Or they're going to a concert, they'll put that on there because they know they won't have that afternoon free. So they'll have to adjust the study time that they gave out to themselves. So this one's just really important to put all the big assignments that you have. And also people like to color code it sometimes. So for one class, you can make that class green and highlight it. For the next class, you can make it pink. For the next class, you can make it yellow. And that helps stand out which classes are when, because different assignments will be worth different point values, and different classes will have different credit assignments. So you can focus on like, yellow is my hardest class, green is my easiest class, things like that. So I encourage you to pause the video and work on that. Okay, so that's all we had. If you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to us via our website or the phone number. Thank you.